I have not done this before with this on the app, so let's see if it works. Get you something of value here. That's about right. This, and I'm not even sure if I can interact with you through this. This is Theistes or Thyestes. Not quite sure what I'm going to call it yet. But it is in need of hand wiring, and I'm in need of sleep. But apparently that's just not going to happen. Right. So, I get to talk about this. Come on now. This is going to kind of count as a vlog. How's that? It's all pretty bad. Whatever. But wound up watching a video on a documentary on minimalism, which is something that my wife has been interested in for a while. Just watering the solder sponge. You gotta water it so it grows up nice and strong. Right, so I was watching a documentary on minimalism, and it was talking about cell phones and how this everything is constantly vying for your attention. I mean, it talks about lots of other stuff, but that's what's been on my mind lately, so that's what kind of stuck out to me the most. The idea that by capturing attention, you capture interest in some way in order to monetize that interest. And what's neat is, neat, I guess? What's interesting is I'm doing it right now. Although I suppose you can watch this whenever you like. The idea of interrupting what you're doing, interrupting what your brain would normally be doing for the purposes of monetizing that interest is bad, not great. I mean, the internet is great, but the idea that, okay, phones are great, the internet is great, but consuming all of your attention is not great. You need downtime. That's why something like shower thoughts is so popular. We use the big solder for this. I've got these are Kale, or however you pronounce them, low profile switches, and they are, as promised, very low profile. For this particular build, it has two more layers. There's a spacer layer and then a base layer, and then I put another layer on top, just top cover, protect it a little bit. That's really unnecessary, but it's just really slim and really light, and I look forward to using it. Shower thoughts. the idea that you have a period of time where you are not doing anything and allowing your brain to more or less chill, you know, let your mind wander, that kind of thing. Um, and I'm not one of those people that says, people don't pay attention to each other nowadays. You know, the idea like, oh, you step on a bus and everyone's got their face stuck in a phone, which you dispel with an individual picture of people on the bus in the 50s with, a newspaper in front of their faces. It is I'm learning that time is your most valuable resource. But what is also valuable is time to think. Your brain requires this. I shouldn't say that. Creativity requires it. Your ability to figure stuff out requires it. Your ability to be comfortable with yourself and spend a little bit of time on something and go, you know what? I'm not sure I like that situation. I don't think I like that person even. Like what was Bill saying that other day? What did he mean when he said that? That seems odd. Stuff is stuck in your brain. Yeah, it is stuck in your brain. I want to say, well, it's really just me, or I can't speak for you. But no, I'm going to say stuff is stuck in your brain. And your brain wants to figure it out. And your brain cannot and will not figure it out so long as we are shoving things into its face at all the time. I am pre-tinning these solder points on these posts because it's awesome and you should do it too. Pre-tinning is probably one of the most important things. That got me soldering, because for years I could not solder. I was terrible at it. Actually, this is my first successful soldering project. Look at those gigantic, horrible joints. See? Those big globs. And so many of those joints were cold. I don't know how that thing worked. But by God it did. I just kept globbing solder on until it started working. Took me a long time to learn how to solder. I did a terrible job at it. But pre-tinning things helps a lot. So it is always worth it to pre-tin. And when I say tinning, I really just mean getting a proper bond of the solder to the metal that you're working with. Because it's hard to take two pieces of metal that have different volumes and heat transmission ability. You know, if I've got this block of stock aluminum and I touch my soldering iron to it, well, I'm heating a whole lot more mass than I would be if I just heated, this little metallic end here. So in order to accomplish good solder joints, you apply heat to the solder and to the item so that you melt the solder to the item, because the solder melts much easier than the item. So you can have this like metal point and then solder, and at the contact point the solder is very well melded to the metal, but on the outside it's got a much lower melting point. So if I take that much lower melting point and take another item with solder on it with a much lower melting point, it's a lot easier to get that solder to bond than it is to get two metallic pieces together and then put solder on them and heat both of them and bond both of them at the same time. So pre-tinning makes soldering a lot easier. You don't have to, obviously. There we go. But I've found it makes it a big difference because, like I said, my soldering was terrible. It's almost non-functional. So there's a big honking spider down here when I came in. I don't even remember what I was talking about. Pre-tinning, very good. But so many things are vying for our attention and trying to monetize that attention. Like I said, your brain's trying to figure stuff out. And as a company, YouTube or Facebook or whomever, want more of your eyeballs. And I guess to an extent, I do too. I want eyeballs so that you can hear what I'm saying. But if it is of interest, if you need to go to sleep, or if this is stealing you away from friends or family, then by all means disconnect. The point is to consume this media on your schedule. So that you balance it. I used to think that capitalism in the marketplace just kind of worked everything out. Well, I think I see someone left. That's good. Go live your life. Be free. You can watch this later. The idea that capitalism is just delivering whatever people want is not necessarily a positive thing. Because sometimes we appeal to our baser instincts. The internet is full of pornography. And that isn't necessarily a good thing. But it is what you want, or at least what one of your component selves want. Because we have all kinds of drives and motivations. It's easy to say, I'm hungry. Yeah. Does that mean you should go murder a man and take his sandwich? Well, no, there's other considerations. There's easier ways to take care of that. Ways that have fewer consequences. That's a bit extreme. But in the aforementioned pornography example, you say, I would like sex. Well, if I just watch this pornography, then it'll be fine. I don't have to murder a man. But it's a quick fix. And it has consequences on the other end. Consequences will never be the same. Yes. So, I thought it was just people delivering what people wanted. you know, your Facebook feed is to an extent a reflection of yourself. What does it reflect? Good or bad? But what is interesting is we at the same time want bigger, better things. We understand that quick fixes aren't great. They aren't helpful. We understand that quick fixes, almost intrinsically, we understand that, the easy way out is almost never actually the best way. But we make an excuse based on time. Well, I'll just do this time, and I'll do the right thing later. I'll just play some video games for a little bit, and I'll work on that big important project that doesn't really have any driving. I'm talking about like personal projects, something with a deadline. It's easy to tell yourself you need to work on, and to force yourself to work on. But in the cases of personal projects, or even like books you might like reading, it can be harder to read a book, to understand a thing or learn a thing, or electronics design or building keyboards, studying ergonomics, stuff like that. That's good and important, and you need to do it. But playing a video game right now, that's just about a lot funner, a lot more fun, more interesting, easier. And to the extent that it is easier, we think it's all right. But we do understand that we're cheating. So, as I said, companies like Facebook and YouTube, like, they're filling a need. People have that need. They want it quick and easy and fast, a little bit of cheap entertainment. More power to them. They're just helping with what the market wants, which is what you want. So why is that wrong? Well, by itself, it's not. If I say I want to take the easy way out, and you can say, sure, I can help you do that. But that doesn't mean that you're helping me. Where things get a little bit more sinister is where companies start hiring psychologists to determine what it is people want and what makes them want more. Apparently that pull down to refresh thing, that action, that motion, that's designed after a slot machine, which is just crazy. But the design was intentional. It was not by accident. For this reason, you can determine that these companies are not your friends, which you might have already suspected. Certainly I did. But I didn't know to what extent. Further, I can ask, so like I said earlier, your brain needs time to ruminate, to process this stuff, to figure stuff out. And when your phone is, by design, interrupting you, with new exciting things that you do indeed want to see, and yes, they are providing a service, And yeah, that is good. It may not be good for you, but it is good. You start to lose that. I shudder to think of how much of this generation's ideas were on the cusp of being formed when a tweet interrupted there's a quote called What Information Consumes. And I don't have it. It's in my other notebook, but you can look it up yourself. What information consumes is attention. And what we have today is an abundance of information. It's the 24-hour news cycle and all that. It allows us and feeds on us, feeds our ability, I should say, to indulge in just paying attention constantly to things that we deem important. And I'll be the first to say I've gotten out of politics. I used to use it as almost a hobby. But politics are important. It is important that you look at those things and pay attention to those things to an extent. But, all things in moderation. The idea of a 24-hour news cycle means that you can never run out of information. And I don't mean that there's always information that is relevant and interesting. I just mean that there will always be information, period. And that if you do not moderate yourself, companies will control that attention with that information. That's a result of bandwidth becoming less expensive and all kinds of stuff like that. But the outcome is the same. It's you being interrupted. You always having something to pay attention to, something new. I don't want to say new and exciting, but something of apparent import. Some new terror to follow, some new worry to have. Some new reason why the country will be destroyed. It's not healthy, obviously. But it's just that constant interruption. The incessant notifications. The belligerent interruptions. These systems, and I didn't believe this until, you just listen to their words. You listen to the people who are talking about these things, and they'll tell you, yes, it is designed to do this. Well, the systems are designed to keep your attention because if I made an application and I wanted people to use it, that's just my goal, my objective. And the question is, when does it become abusive? And when you're an individual or a small company, you can ask that question. But when you're a larger company, driven by the profits and investors and all that, you can't. You lose that luxury to be able to say, is this okay? Like, I get that we can do it, but should we? Is this all right? Can read about internet addicted people in other countries, people who live literally at cyber cafes. Come on now. There we go. And, you know, where's the accountability, I guess, is the question. And as a libertarian, blah, 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 you know, it's not the company's job to moderate you. But like I said, when you start hiring psychologists in order to determine why people click on your app and how to get them to click more, why people put their eyeballs onto your app and how to keep them there longer, start to wonder, are we the baddies? Obviously, it is not the responsibility of these companies to moderate themselves. I mean, legally, not socially. Socially, they should. They should understand that when people spend a lot of time on Facebook, they are measurably less happy. That can be for a variety of reasons, but the result is the same. When I tell a company, your app makes people unhappy, is their answer, how do we change that? Or is their answer, but our profits are up, so who cares? I tread a fine line because I'm a libertarian and I think these companies should be free to do as they please for the most part. But the responsibility lies with the individual and with the parents in the case of kids and such. But I mean, at some point you got to be like, all right, so here's how we're going to advertise to kids and get them to buy stuff and pester their parents to buy this thing so that the next week we'll release new things and then they'll want to buy those things and they'll throw away the old ones. It's like, at what point do you just be like, is this okay? Is this actually evil? Again, it's not the evils of capitalism. You're providing a service that people want. You're just appealing to their base instincts, social status through consumerism, that kind of thing. Yeah, they don't need a bigger house, but they'll feel better if they have one. Well, turns out, no. They think they feel better. Not really an easy answer to this. Living with less. Things, especially debt, are traps. Always have been, always will be. Debt for consumerism's debt for the purpose of consumerism is a horrible idea. Terrible. But, and I was talking to a business partner, I guess. I don't know what we are. We just help each other out. Talking to him about this, it's like a cell phone enables you to do amazing things. Technology is a multiplier. It doesn't have morality. If I'm doing good things with technology, it's because I am a good person. If I'm doing bad things with technology, it's because I'm a bad person. What is it? Multiplies your will, I think, is the right term. So the answer is always going to be self-moderation. But there are always going to be people who are trying to take advantage of your base instincts. Your fear and uncertainty. Couple that with a doubt. That's the trifecta. That's it. Al Gore. He played on our fears. Everyone plays on our fears. Because they're just so playable. The objective, the goal should be to step out of your fear. Or at least be mindful, which is a word I'm loath to use, of what's happening to you when you're appeasing those baser fears. And God can be a big part of that. To say, well, God's in control. So, what, truly, what do I have to fear? That's powerful. Because it makes you difficult to control. And I have always been difficult to control. Or at least I strove to be. And I'm sure that's just a bit of temperament. I've got these diodes coming together. When you bend these guys, they keep the bend. So the goal should be to make use of that bend, that little bit of tension, so that two of these are contacting each other. If one is bent up, then kind of try to fold it around behind it so that it's pushing up against and making solid contact, so that you only have to heat one point and then add solder, so you don't need helping hands. It just requires more setup. And the more setup, ugh. The more setup that is required, the longer your solder projects are going to take, and the more annoyed you're going to be by the process, and the less likely you are to continue. If you make things easier, you do more things. that kind of fits into the doing more with less thing. Making money and, getting ahead and business and all that. It's usually, or at least we tell ourselves it is, a solution to a problem. And the problem of needing more is actually not the problem, because the problem is wanting more. When I say, well, I have to work at this job that I don't like because I need to pay my bills, for X, Y, or Z, or, a jet ski or something like that. Something cool. You're trying to justify not bad decisions, but it's like I have to work at this job that I don't like. And jobs are really weird things. The idea that you spend so much time, you spend 8 hours plus lunch, 9 hours, and then you go home and you sleep for 8 hours, and you've got like 8 more hours in there with your family. It's like half of your waking hours. Add a commute in there. You're literally spending more time at your job with your coworkers than you are at home. But you do it because, stuff. I need to because jet ski, because bigger home. And I'm coming from California on this, so there's a lot of materialism out there and a lot of money. A lot of money. Which I'm sure feeds all that. But if you can free yourself from those requirements to understand that you don't actually need a jet ski. Like, things don't get better when you have a jet ski. Things don't get better when you have the latest iPhone. Things don't get better when you have the newest computer. At least not in a way that really counts. Then you free yourselves of a heavy level of desire. And which is a weird thing to say in a capitalist society, because I am still a capitalist, but the question is, what is the thing doing for you? What am I getting out of this, really? What is the purpose of this? And that's why it's a little complicated, because I get down on debt. You shouldn't go into debt. It's just a bad idea. However, if you use a tool like financing to get access to game-changing is not the right word, but extremely powerful technologies, such as this phone right here, it can enable a lot. It can enable you to make money to pay off the phone, which is really cool. It's like you think about it from like the perspective of a piece of equipment. If I purchase a 3D printer and then start 3D printing things for people, providing a service with that tool, then that tool can pay for itself. Your phone can pay for itself. Your phone can connect you with people on Craigslist. It can connect you with people on Facebook. Gary Vaynerchuk is very good at this. He talks about that all the time. How your phone is just an unbelievable power source. It's unbelievable potential. It opens up so much of the world to you, and the potential to earn and do and learn to get better. I'm self-taught on just about everything, and I'm from the days when, I learned computers and I learned Linux and I learned programming from books in Barnes and Noble. I would go there and I would read for hours. And now it's on the internet. It's in the palm of your hand. It's crazy. But everyone's still looking for the quick fix. And that's the other thing I like about Gary Vaynerchuk. There is no quick fix with him. He's the guy out there going, everyone wants a quick fix. If you had a quick fix solution, there'd be 10 million people doing it. If you do the thing that's hard, if you put in the work, you become that minority of people that gets really successful. So, like I said, the technology is very good and powerful and enabling. But the question is, what are you doing with it? You need to be, and this is a financial term, leveraging your assets. If you have an asset, think about Lyft or Uber. You have a car and a license. And so you have an asset. Now that car can do nothing for you. It can get you from point A to point B, or it can affect your earning potential. It's looking all right. Those diodes coming across. This is cool wood. It's a local laser cutter shop. I forget, it's like a birch of some kind. I want to say Arctic, but I'm not sure. That rifle's Arctic birch. But it's very strong and very light, which is why this portable build is going to be very, very handy. But just start thinking about your assets, things that you have that other people could use. Oh yeah, so you have a car and a license. And that car can either be a thing that, I guess it started with finance, assets and liabilities. If I have a thing that costs me money, it's a liability. If I have a thing that I can sell for financial gain, it can be an asset. But you could have something that's both. If I have a car, or let's use the phone example. I use one of the silly financing plans to get a smartphone, and it costs me, $7 a month, $10 a month. I don't even know what it costs. Or $100 a month. Then set a goal. When I started doing Lyft, which is basically like Uber, I had a few months where my car paid for itself. Obviously, I put time into it and effort, and obviously, the car doesn't just drive itself. And I had to maintain the car, but my car paid its car payment. And that was really cool. So the next time you pay your phone bill, ask yourself if you would like your phone to help you pay your phone bill. If you would like your phone to pay for itself. That'd be pretty cool. That potential is very heavy right now. And in America, it's a bit easier. Other countries, not so much, but systems like Bitcoin exist for exchanging currency. You can sell stuff. You can be a reseller. That's another thing Gary Vaynerchuk talks about. Just Facebook Marketplace. Just going on Facebook Marketplace and selling stuff, buying stuff and selling stuff, going to Craigslist free. Taking people who don't want to take the time, don't or won't or can't take the time to sell their things, and they just want it out. And you can be someone who finds those things and connects them with people who will pay money for them. And what you're contributing is your time into that transaction. That's why Gary Vaynerchuk talks about that with like, that's how you get started. Like, if you have $1,000, you can get started. If you have $500, you can get started. If you have $100, you can get started. And now with Vaynerchuk, is like with the cell phone and the Craigslist free stuff and Facebook Marketplace, he's like, you don't need any money. You can just start. Find stuff, Google around. You have all this information freely available to you online. You can go on eBay, check the prices of things, check the quality, determine if you can resell this item, and then go get it using transport of some means, hopefully, and go sell it. And you just made money. You added value, so you made money. And you go from there. Like, I have a server. A server is a Linode box virtual server. It costs $10 a month. Super cheap. It did not do much of anything for a long time. But now it's, arguably, more or less, it's paying for itself. Because I'm using it to do work that is paying. And by having that server, it makes my work easier. And it's, serving the website and the PayPal links for keyboard sales and stuff like that. So it's earning its keep. So the idea, applying that idea means that when you look at a new thing, that new iPhone, the question is, what is this going to do to earn its keep? Why am I buying this, and what am I going to get out of it? What is this benefit going to be to me or to my family? Or what is the negative going to be? I'm pretty negative on TV. I should probably watch, informational stuff, documentaries and things, but it's just hard. I don't like to, because I think it's a giant waste. But it's like, oh, a new TV. This TV's getting old. If I buy a new TV, the best case scenario is I spend more time watching TV, which doesn't seem like a best case scenario at all. It seems like a negative scenario to me. So, you get the latest iPhone. What is the best case scenario for this latest iPhone? Facial recognition, slightly better, animated emojis, whatever. It's just consumerism. It's buying stuff to fill a need you don't really have. But if you use your cell phone for, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, instant communications with people, setting things up, selling things, buying things, selling your products, or even just learning stuff on YouTube, stuff that you like, stuff that is interesting to you, or stuff that you can sell, Now it's adding value. Now it's earning its keep. it's like the wild wild west out there right now, man. You know, you learn stuff for free, basically. And I don't know what's going to happen with YouTube in the future. I just think I really hate the idea of looking back and saying, "Oh yeah, those were the days of YouTube. You know, those were the glory days when you could just look up anything, when you could learn how to do anything." You know, you want to become a plumber, you want to become an HVAC technician, you want to become a programmer. There's videos of people showing you how to do it. There's websites of people doing it. And that's distributed, you know. There's lots of other places to get that information. But YouTube is just so centralized. It's so handy. Learning so much, and we have access to so much information. I heard it called the Library of the Library of Alexandria. The idea that all this information is, you know, information is power. I learned that pretty early on. Plus, it's a nice little hacker credo. You know, I was talking about my distrust, and that's kind of been cultivated through that. And I've always been, like I said, I think I've always been like that, but in a good way, maybe. I don't know. It's just a temperament. Being a hacker is more about being curious, anyways. I think the term has taken on many meanings lately. You're always looking for attack vectors. You know, if I engage in this, that, and the other, the question is how open to attack from those different areas. And the idea of YouTube or Facebook, you know, that these things are so innocuous. You know, I'm just using it to connect with my family and my friends. You know, what's the harm? Well, apparently there's a lot of harm. You know, I'm just using YouTube to learn new things. Okay. What? What are you learning? You know, how do YouTube recommendations work? You may, 2, 3, 4, 5, even balk at the idea of Facebook controlling the emotions of its users by controlling what inputs are received. But it did it. It did it as an experiment. I think it was a 6-month experiment where they determined whether or not they could affect the moods of their users by changing what they see in their feeds. And they were successful. So, you know, I'm just using YouTube to learn whatever. Well, why? Well, I saw a link on it somewhere. It seemed interesting to me. Okay. Where'd you see the link? Who showed you the link? Google? I just saw an ad. Who showed you the ad? That was not, in the hacker terms, an attack vector that I had expected. So when you start to wonder what things you are being shown, that was poor. There we go. You can start to wonder what things you aren't being shown. Arguably much more important, much more dangerous. So since we're talking about the free market, where are the free market alternatives? I am not a proponent of legislating, regulating these companies in order to control their activities, but honestly, they're making me doubt. It's really that bad. To be able to affect, it's like the banker idea. It's like, oh, the bankers control the world. Yeah, right. And then there's instances, like historical instances of banks saying, hey, so we don't like what's going on and we're going to create inflation, or we're going to affect the lending rate. And the result is wages go down and unemployment goes up, and then people get unhappy and they change out the people, change out the politicians. It's like, that was not an attack vector that I had considered. There's a documentary called Money Masters that's on YouTube. It's worth watching. But, I'm here making keyboards for my own interests and pursuits, but also for selling. Sailing? For selling online. And I learned most, if not all, from other people who wanted to share this information. That's good. There's lots of good. There is lots of good in this. Lots to be benefited. Mankind benefits from all this. But other people do as well. They're taking advantage of this. Wherever there's an engine, there's going to be someone who wants to power that engine, to affect that engine. And certainly wherever there's money. It's so weird. Advertising by itself is just so strange. And I don't know if I'm just someone who's not very affected by it, but the idea that you can be like, hey, Coca-Cola, right? And then people are like, oh, let me go buy some Coca-Cola. I don't know. It seems like voodoo to me. I don't think it really has as much impact as people think it does, as opposed to something like direct marketing, which has a more measurable result. But I'm a programmer, so that might be a bit obvious. Did it work? I don't know. Can you check it? Not really. That doesn't make sense to me. Global sales are up 0.5% after the ad campaign. Okay. That's good, I guess. Did that have any impact? I don't know. I don't know much about advertising. As is made clear by my sales. My poor sales. I don't really push a lot into it. Because I think if people want it, they'll get it. But I also view it as a failing of argument. I haven't crystallized my argument well enough to convince people. So if you get a solid tension hold on these, you can see how they're all kind of pointed in the same direction. It's because I was just able to lay them in there so that they had contact, and then heat the diode and the contact point, and then add solder, and you get a solid joint. And then you just cut off the excess. So now I'm going to start bending them into each other as I have on this side. Like I said, it's just easier that way. Whenever you make your process easier, you make yourself more likely to do it. Like I said, I've done a lot of hand wiring. and I try my best to make that process as simple as possible. Otherwise, I don't do it. If it's, if the annoyance level is 15 on doing something like this, then I'm probably not going to do it. But if I could lower that annoyance level, then it's like, yeah, I can put an hour into this or something. Or it can be this situation where I'm just awake. I made the mistake of watching a Bitcoin documentary. So now my brain's spinning about cryptography and cryptocurrencies and all that. I've been out of the loop for a couple years on Bitcoin. It's still, well, it always has been an amazing technology with incredible potential. The documentary covered a number of instances of people saying, well, we got to regulate this, that, and the other, and we need to do this, and here's what I think Bitcoin should be, and here's what I think Bitcoin should be, and I just smile. Because the nature of Bitcoin is such that you can't really change it. I mean, unless you're a miner and you make the miner decisions on, what version of Bitcoin you're going to run, you can't really change it. It's consensus based. Like, everyone has to change it if they want to change it. And if they don't, then it doesn't work. The miners are really the ones with the power. But as long as Bitcoin is even moderately stable, they benefit by just keeping things the way they are. Which is good and bad, but in something as new as this is, keeping things stable is a good thing. I was always interested in cryptography. I don't know if that was... Oh, come on. There we go. I don't know if that was before or after the hacker background. But at this point, so much information is out there. Yeah. The idea of privacy is very... Well, it feels weird to say it. Foreign. I acknowledge privacy. I understand privacy. However, I also understand that to a great extent you don't have any. And, well, I also believe that, well, I believed this before I was religious, actually. The Bible says something to the effect of, what you whisper in secret will be shouted from the rooftops. Everyone will know. And that's part of why I use my name. And that was a big shift. Happened like 4 years ago. Accountability is important. Let me put it this way. I haven't found an instance where accountability is a negative. anytime you're doing a thing and you think, gosh, it sure would be bad if, my mom found out about this, or my wife or my kids. It's not a good thing. This is my brain. It's 4 in the morning, and I'm just gonna, I don't know, just like get ready and go somewhere and do some work or something. The good news is it's been a while since I've had one of these episodes of just can't sleep, gotta think. So I mentioned earlier the idea of, what things have been lost to a Facebook post or what is it, a phone notification. I think that your brain needs to figure stuff out, and it needs downtime to figure that stuff out. And if you deny it downtime by filling it with needless, mindless entertainment, or distractions, rather, is a better term, I guess, that you will suffer for it. Your brain is trying to figure stuff out, and when it can't, you suffer for it. So the question is, how do you accomplish that downtime? And I've been paying more attention to distractions, because I would use video games for some distractions when I needed distractions. But I rapidly found that it was not, or rather, certain games were not conducive to thinking. Pacing is good, for me at least. I mentioned this earlier, shower thoughts. So you're sitting there, not really doing much. You're engaging in a routine activity that is washing yourself. It's something you've done frequently. You're not really engaging your brain to perform that task. So your brain kind of wanders and thinks about other things and wonders about stuff and imagines things, and at the end of it you have an idea, an epiphany, or something like that. Your brain needs those moments. And I found that some, at least, video games actively prevent that. I would go and play and be like, all right, I kind of need to think about this, but I kind of want to step away from it for a while, and I'll go and play this game. And then I would go and play the game, and then afterwards I'd be like, I don't think I thought one bit about that process, that project, that problem. And that's almost impressive. Like, this was not what I had intended. So some games do it and some games don't. So I'm trying to find out the things that do that do work, and talking about these things, which is why I'm live streaming, because I want other people to benefit from some of this information. Talking about these things helps. Verbalizing them, restating the ideas. This is basically a mind dump. These are the things that are on my mind at the moment. And I hope that by restating them and even sharing them with you, that I benefit you and me. The reason I am soldering is because soldering is one of those activities that I can talk during and do somewhat mindlessly. I should probably add some cryptocurrency to my website so that people can buy using stuff. Cool. And that in itself will add some interesting challenges because, debt security dough, I just gotta make sure that everything is secure. The thing about security is like I said, you're not going to have any privacy, really. I think at the end of the day, you will not. That's mostly why I went public with my name and all that, because I went to great pains to ensure my anonymity because, hacker. I mean, not that I was breaking any laws. My hacking was all professional. But I still valued my privacy. But who wants to hide? And who wants to follow someone who hides? Who wants to be inspired by someone who hides? I'm not sure what the word would be. But there is definitely accountability. Accountability is king. Getting old. Come on now. I didn't have any magnet wire, and I needed some. So I took apart a motor to get the spindle, and that's how a motor works. Is it's driven by magnet wire, more or less, and some solid state magnets. So now I've been harvesting the magnet wire off of this. It makes some aspects of handwiring very easy. Come on. Namely the columns. There we go. Oh, bugger. That's on the inside. These are spooled around the post, and I think I've got the one on the inside, so it's all coiled around this in the middle, which is not helpful to me. I will show you. There we go. Why these are so useful. Yeah. There we go. Magnet wire. I'm not sure if you can see it. Very fine. Very fragile. It can be broken rather easily. But it is regular wire that has an enamel coating on it. So it is insulated. So instead of having columns and having to, strip wires like these in order to connect your vertical columns, you use this lovely stuff. Yeah. To connect to each of the posts. All you gotta do is get started on one of the posts, solder to it. The enamel, the insulating enamel, burns off with a little bit of heat and solder contact. So if you touch a soldering iron to this wire with some solder on the tip, or whatever, you'll make contact with it, electrical contact. And then every other place will still be insulated. So here are my rows, all done. They're all connected across, except for in the middle. These are separated, so I'll have to connect those. But I need to connect this post to this post to this post to this post, do a column. And this is a very tedious process, or at least it was before this. So what we will do is almost tie a knot. There we go. All I'm doing is kind of wrapping it around it so that it's staying there. And then heat the element, add solder, et voila, solid solder point. So now the wire is connected there. And now I just take this remaining bit of wire, move it down to the next post, wrap it around, and then move on. Wrap it around, move on, wrap it around, move on. So now I've used wire, not soldered, but I've wrapped wire around this post, this post, this post. So now I'm going to move across here and then connect this post, this post, this post, and then repeat the process up and down all these columns. Now, the columns are not meant to be connected. So once I've physically wrapped all these and I solder them so that they're held in place, I will cut the wire that connects between these two columns so that these will be connected and these will be connected and they'll be independent. But the result of the process, doing it this way, is it's much faster. You don't actually need to solder. You're batching your work. Batch. Because this way I'm not like set a wire, solder, set a wire, solder, or even strip, do a column, strip, do a column. I'm doing all of the columns at the same time. I'm soldering all the points at the same time, and then I'm cutting the lines between all of them, and all of my columns work. Plus, this is a process that you can do at home, with your family, I don't mean like with your family. I mean like in that you're not down in the garage hiding like a troll or something. Being away from your family to do this process, which you would with solder. Like soldering is lead fumes and all kinds of nastiness you have to deal with, or at least to have your kids deal with. There we go. So all I'm doing is going to the next post. Might need a little help on a couple of these. Wrap it around the post. Yeah, I'm going to save my work. There we go. So all these are connected, right? But if I grab this and start pulling up, it'll disconnect. It'll unwrap on all of them. So what I call saving work is just to do a few solder points just to hold everything in place. Mainly just the top and bottoms of the columns. And you can just keep going. And if you get stuck or you trip or you drop it, you don't lose all that work. And this is how you hand wire columns very quick and efficiently. Some of these posts just want to fight you. This is a bad post. Come on now. There we go. After that fight, I'm just going to save these real quick. And stripping those wires, making those little wires that have little stripped areas in between them so they're insulated. Super annoying. It's just an annoying process. And this is way better. Nice. So you're probably not going to wind up doing a ton of hand wiring throughout your life, but if you do, you will do it the correct way and the easy way. So, as stated, I took my magnet wire, connected here, and just went up this column and then over and then over and then over and then over. And now all you have to do is sever the connections between these columns, because the columns are not meant to be connected together. So now this column is isolated from this column. So you lose a little bit of magnet wire, but believe me, you make it up in time saved. Some of these just refuse to be wrapped. There we go. Come on now. There we go. Go. Already had a bit of a cough, but I can't imagine that this is helping. Can really taste the solder, you know. I've got that new grape flavor solder. Got to go with that stuff. Solder is just full of all kinds of nastiness. You don't want it in your lungs. So you'll see me blowing to keep it at least mostly away from me. I don't solder enough professionally, I think, to warrant a fume extractor. Uh, I'm also in the process of, working towards building circuit boards. I am building circuit boards, which means less time with solder, but arguably the same amount of solder. So if you do any extended soldering, it's probably a good investment because you only get 2 lungs. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but we're looking for these vertical connections here. Oh, just kind of catching the light right here. So you wind up doing a bunch of columns with this magnet wire very easily. Not only that, the magnet wire winds up being very very fine and easy to work with. It doesn't get in the way. It's not, chunky. So I just like it a lot. It has definitely become the way I do columns now. There we go. Also works really well for fine soldering. I did my Leopold Toper top rank Bluetooth modification, and I took the existing USB micro connector and soldered wee tiny little wires to those little tiny little connections with a big fat soldering tip. But it did work with that magnet wire. And the magnet wire works fine for all the high-speed communication USB does. So that's nice. Don't have to worry about that. And again, all I'm doing is just hitting the next post, looping around once, either clockwise or counterclockwise, depending on how the post feels about me connecting to it. Just making a tension hold, basically, for physical connectivity. That might be a problem. I'll find out later. There we go. And then this wire, since it's insulated with enamel, I don't have to worry about it coming into contact with the columns, or rather the rows, which is why people make those little insulated column wires that have the insulation peeled back on 3 segments or whatever. It's just super annoying to make. If you don't believe me, try making them. There we go. 2 more columns done. Now we save our work. As soon as you get some hot solder on that, the enamel burns away and you get a solid connection. The weird thing about Bitcoin is you kind of need a medium. Something that's convenient that you can connect to. Which kind of requires trust, which is generally considered a bad thing in the Bitcoin world. But unless you're high volume, you know, the ease of delivery. It's just like the perfect is the enemy of the good. You know, especially in security, you're always trying to pursue that perfect security, the perfect safety, and it just, not only does it not exist, it actively prevents you from using the product, using what is pretty good, and making what is pretty good even better. I mean, that's what, like, that applies to everything, really, even the keyboard design. I made so many keyboards and made so many different designs because I wanted it to be better, because I kept using what I had. And when I used what I had, I said, this kind of sucks, and this needs to change, and I don't really like that. Or I looked at someone else's thing and thought they did something cool. I was like, how can I do something like that? What would I need to change? What would be required? Oops. But actively making use of the thing, you know, it grants you insight you would not have otherwise had if you were not using it. It's like the language thing. If you want to learn a language, you can sit and do classes and take instruction and learn from people. But unless you're actually doing it, you know, that's when things start to really click. And when you start actually using some of these tools, that's when you start to realize where they're not good, where they are good, and where things need to change. So that's why I have like 5 designs at this point for keyboards. There's probably only one that was really outmoded. Like, the Signum 2 still has a purpose. The Signum 3 still has a purpose. The Signum 3.1 still has a purpose. the kitchen sink has all the purposes. Yeah. If you listen to the vlogs, you know about the kitchen sink. I've actually figured out what that's going to be. Come on. And it's going to be a little bit more retro than I had expected, which is just fine with me. Just unexpected. Come on. Aye. This is what I'm talking about. Sometimes it just doesn't want to work. Well, I'm just going to solder you then. It's going to borrow from the, what is it, the F77? That kind of keyboard, the recess, and then the high edges. And it's going to have a back to it. It's going to be called the Microbe, which is a play on the Micro B for some reason. It has more in common with other designs, but I don't know. That one just kind of stuck in my head. But it'll have a Bluetooth module that will fit into it like a cartridge. That handheld scientific Bluetooth module is very useful. So it'll be battery powered with a Power Boost 1000C charger, and that'll power the Bluetooth or the Raspberry Pi. So your keyboard will have a computer in it, and you'll be able to use that computer for stuff. Just another Raspberry Pi Zero project. But maybe something more. I had originally, well, technically I still am, I was designing it to be a circuit board. But this type of form factor doesn't really support that, because everything's kind of floating around in a 3D space rather than a 2D flattened space. So, not sure what'll happen there. There's a potential for doing like the old computers did, and just making a circuit board that has connectors on it, and then those connectors go to use wires, you know, like header contacts kind of, to connect to the different points. You know, if you had like a LED display panel or something, it would have a ribbon cable coming out of it, and that would connect to the motherboard. So it's a bit odd, but so am I. It'll be a non-ergonomic build, at least not any more ergonomic than a 40% is, a standard grid layout. But it'll basically be a 40% that has a little section behind it that'll stand up a little bit above the keys on the keyboard. Should be pretty neat. It'll still be small enough that it'll be handy, and then it'll obviously be a normal keyboard that you will be able to connect to your computer. But you'll also be able to plug it, instead of into a computer, plug it into your Bluetooth module to make it a Bluetooth keyboard, or plug it directly into your Raspberry Pi to interface with it directly. Come on. So that'll be pretty neat. So wherever you are, you'll have a nice terminal to use. Oh, the other thing is a phone support. Building an in-body phone stand, and then adding a USB to go cable means that you can stand your phone up in it, in the keyboard body, and then, activate the Bluetooth and connect to your phone, or you can connect via USB to go straight to the phone and work on your phone. Respond to a text message in quick kind rather than using the soft keyboard. Or send an email or whatever. Just convenient. And again, you're not really sacrificing anything for it because it's all built into the keyboard. And you already have the keyboard around, and it's all in one package. And if you wind up going somewhere, you can, and this is where it gets tricky. If you were to take the keyboard and set your phone in it, in the phone stand, and then use the Raspberry Pi built into your keyboard, activate that Raspberry Pi, and then connect to the Raspberry Pi's Wi-Fi as an access point on your phone, you can use your phone as a screen for the Raspberry Pi built into your keyboard. So that kind of gets around the idea of having to have a screen built into it, which is kind of required for a cyber deck, but maybe I'll get there one day. For the form factor, it's just hard to fit that. It is very tempting to make a cyber deck large, but I'm, for better or worse, a travel guy. So all of my stuff tends to need to travel. Not that anything I'm doing is particularly complicated, unique, I guess. Anyone with moderate knowledge can copy the input-output scheme that I've done, or that I will be using. So, you want to make a giant cyber deck, you can do it. What I might also do later on is connect it to a what is it? A Dell AT101W, because them's are nice mechanical keyboards. Oh. Good. Oh, right. They're just inexpensive, and I mean, I'm basically looking for a housing. I'm looking for a body to build all this stuff into, because I'm adding all the circuitry, the power, the charge circuits, and the battery, and any of the USB switching. I might be doing. So it doesn't really matter. All that matters is that it's a solid case. That works well. Ah, missed ya. I mean, if there was when I'm done making this one in 40%, I'm probably going to make a 60%. And you'll be able to fit more stuff in it. That way you can have a 60% that's normal, small footprint 60%. Or I make it platform agnostic, so you pick whatever 60% you want or whatever fits into the, what is it, 15 by 5 key set unit area. And then you too can have a keyboard that is more than a keyboard. It's a keyboard and a computer and a Bluetooth keyboard and a phone stand with phone input and a battery pack. I mean, it'll have a battery and a charging circuit, so it might as well be USB power. You know, you can use it to charge your phone or type on your phone, or swap that phone around so it's the display for your Raspberry Pi, and then nice. Ah, there you are. Spooky. Like a spider. My wife said that, and I can't unsee it. It's about 5. I'm probably not going to sleep. But around 6, I can go somewhere and do some work. I guess this thing has worked. I assume so. Take it closer. Flip this around. Yeah. Gonna disorient you. There's all our handiwork for 1 hour and 49 minutes. Interspersed with talking about random nonsense that pops into my head. Not bad time, I think. Alright. Well, I knew it needed to be done, but I wouldn't have done it if I wasn't just stupid awake. Oh. Here's some freebies. There we go. Know how visible this is? There we go. Yeah. So I had been looking for a solid base for a 40% that was basically as low profile as possible. And this is, you know, after a whole bunch of searching, this is the right idea. It just has a cutout for the PCB, you know, the bottom end down here. So it would just fit that cutout right there. And for the JJ40 in particular, with these LEDs, using this 0.08 acrylic, cutting that for a base would be perfect. So you'll have your keyboard, it'll have your switches built on top of it, and then that base will just be a very thin piece that fits on the bottom. I'm not even sure I'm going to have spacers for it. I just want it to be as low profile as possible, but it'll still reflect all the light, so you get the light out the sides. And for basically the cost of a JJ40, which is 35 bucks, you know, and switches and caps, which you can buy however you want to buy, you can get into a 40%, and it'll be, you know, it'll have a base, you'll get your blinky lights, and it'll be protected, so you're not just typing away on a circuit board, which is uncomfortable because I've done it for a while. This is trying to figure out the outline for individual spacing on these keys. When you build like the Signum, everything's just kind of unaligned, so building a case for the top of it is hard. Oh, this is what I was talking about with the 40 design. Focus, there we go. Where it has this edge like the F22 or the F77. Has this edge coming up on it. There, it just kind of sits up the side. But the concept was expanding this back end more and housing things in that back end. This was kind of neat, actually. The idea of having optional connectors on it so that on one side it's a mini and on the other side it's a micro. So you have one opening, one PCB, and it's still centered no matter which one you get. And yeah, this is it. Under this mess, keyboard layout, and then a raised area. And this is not in proportion, it's a bit smaller. But the idea that you have this Bluetooth module that slides into the top of it like a cartridge on an Atari or something like that was pretty neat. As a phone stand, being able to have a flexible cable here so that you can stand it up portrait or lay it down landscape. And that's this cutaway right here. But the idea is just building more features into the keyboard. That's a phone stand. That's a little bit more reflective of the spacing that you'll see on the final build. Yeah. I think that's it. This is figuring out the layering for it. What did I say I was going to call it? I forget. But like battery layer, the Raspberry Pi's fitting in there, but it's also out the back. The Bluetooth module is actually going to slide into the side of it so that you can take it out and then insert it into the top in order to use it. The charging circuit and the cutaway for the phone stand. This will be using a 1/4-inch birch. It should be pretty nice. Overall height, I forget actually. It's 2.5, or it's 1 inch plus, that's half 2 inches. No, that's not 50.75. That's 0.5. 1 inch plus 0.5 is 0.75, so 1.75 inches should be, if I'm reading this right and remembering this right. So that will be pretty interesting. I do hope to be able to have that up pretty soon because my brain, just get it out of my brain, okay? Just let me sleep. Just stop, brain, please. Yeah. I'm actually pretty excited about this build. It'll be very, very low profile. I'm going to post to Reddit today, probably, later on, of a comparison of what this is going to look like, the height. How tall this is going to be as compared to a 40%, actually, as compared to an MX switch, a cherry switch. That said, I don't technically like these zero profile keys. I don't like DSA. I never have. I want to like DSA. I do not. So maybe it'll just take some getting used to. I think people will be interested in the low profile build. And this is one that's rather easy. Rather easy? Pretty easy? Easier to make, I think. These kits are easy to source. I work with a local laser cutter guy. He does some solid work and fast work. So these will be easier to put together. Because right now when someone orders a Signum 2 parts kit, I'm going to the laser cutter and I'm monitoring that and I'm making sure that cut comes out all right. And I'm buying the materials. But this guy can handle that. So that's pretty cool. Takes process time, I guess, off of my plate so that I don't have to worry about it. And I can spend more time doing this silliness or exploring new weird stuff. Yeah, I think that's all I got. See, you get to this point, and then your brain's like, okay, I'm starting to wind down. We can sleep now. And it's like, oh, well, actually, it's like 5 in the morning, so it's time to get up. So I don't know what you're on. What you're on about. The hub. Getting a USB hub into that build. You know, this is obviously more than 1.75 inches. Somewhat obviously. Perhaps not as obvious as I would like to think. Yeah, it's 1.5. No, wait. That's almost exactly 1.75. The problem with this power is the power issue of adding the USB hub to it. Because once you add the USB hub to it, it increases the draw. And if you build it directly into the keyboard, then your keyboard requires more amperage. And then if you share that voltage with a Raspberry Pi, you start getting brownouts and start having other problems. So if it was just the keyboard, and the keyboard was not sharing power with other things, it might be okay, but not the case here. Now if I had a 2-port USB hub, that would probably be a slight enough power draw that I could build it into the keyboard. But you know, as I said earlier, you just start, if you're not sure what to do, just start doing stuff. You know, that was this. I built this, I cut it, I kind of came up with a design, I laid it out, I cut it as kind of a test project for this laser cutter guy. And everything came out well, and then I was just like, you know, I've talked about this before, but your brain's just like, done. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Let's move on. I'm like, really? I'm gonna spend some time on it, and then probably 4 months, 5 months later, I'm like, oh boy, let's dig into this at 2 in the morning on a Sunday night. Whatever. It's all good. It all seems to work out. And since I'm streaming this, other people benefit. So, haha. It is a net positive, even if I will probably take a bit to recover from this. But whatever. That's all I got. I guess this streaming worked out pretty well. I kind of wish I could comment on the comment streaming. But what is not expedient. What is easy to do is much more likely to be done. So the more I complicate a process, the less likely I am to continue doing it. I have 2 JJ40s? Okay. Neat. Should probably be selling those. Build them up or something. How many switches do I have? This is bad. This is where I start another project. 2, 4, 6. 25 blues. 25 blues. However many blacks are in here. Something like that. Do like a half and half. Half the keyboard is this, half the keyboard is that. That seems weird. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34. Yep. There's enough for a keyboard. For 48, 40%. So long as half of them are blacks and half of them are blues. Which just seems like the kind of silly thing I would do. And, well, I'd been thinking about building up that Let's Split. How ridiculous is that? Do a Let's Split build. Half of them are blacks, half of them are blues. That's ridiculous. I like it. Ooh. Oh, I'm smart. I don't think I have. So one of the cool things about your brain being terrible and hating you is sometimes it does stuff and you forget it, but the stuff it did was good. So I apparently grabbed some Pro Micros and put them in here so that I would have them when I was going to build this up, which is pretty neat because I was just looking for some the other day and I could not find any. I accept. Yeah, I'm a little afraid now that I'm gonna do that. Build up a Let's Split that's half blues, half blacks. Ridiculous. Alright. I think I'm about done. Oh yeah. Some other time when it's not 2 in the morning, will I start a live stream and let people actually, when people are actually awake, and I can field questions and stuff like that. It's been a while since I've done one of those. But, yeah. I'm out. Time to brew up some coffee. Start the day. But also, how do I stop this?